Look up at the night sky, and the scale of the physical universe is undeniable. We can measure the distance to the Andromeda galaxy, calculate the mass of its stars, and map its exact trajectory through the dark. Now look at the human brain. It is a 3-pound mass of physical tissue, firing precise electrical impulses across billions of neurons. We can map these biological connections just like we map the stars. But here is where our physics breaks down. There is absolutely no scientific explanation for how those measurable electrical impulses in the brain turn into your subjective, unmeasurable experience of seeing the color red or feeling grief. Philosopher David Chalmers called this the hard problem of consciousness. Curious, what if our basic assumption is wrong? A concept called neutral monism suggests that mind and matter are not two separate substances fighting for control. Instead, physical mass and conscious thought are two different expressions of the exact same underlying reality. Think of that underlying reality as an infinite field of unmanifested potential. In his book, Ousian Dynamics, philosopher Mohamed Al-Amassi calls this Ousia, a Greek term for essence. Ousia exists entirely outside of time, space, and cause and effect. We already see hints of this in quantum field theory. Physicists know that physical particles aren't solid little spheres. They are temporary vibrations within invisible fields. Matter itself is simply a specific organizational pattern of this deeper field. Before taking any physical shape, Ousia is a state of absolute connection. There is no tension, no distance, and no separation between an observer and an object. It is pure, undivided presence. But if this field is already a state of perfect, tensionless potential, why did it take the shape of a physical universe, filled with heavy objects and separated conscious beings? The emergence of physical reality is not a mistake or a search for a missing piece. It is simply the inherent nature of potential to manifest itself into form. An infinite field of possibilities naturally explores those possibilities. This takes place in what we call the field of manifestation. Everything that exists in reality sits somewhere on a sliding scale. Your position on this scale is determined by a single factor, your degree of constraint. On the heavy end of the spectrum, we find extreme constraint. The organizational patterns here are tightly bound, locked into place, and governed by strict, repeatable mathematical rules. We call this dense pattern matter. If you slide toward the middle of the spectrum, the rules loosen up. The patterns become less rigid and more fluid. This is where we find vital energy, emotions, and thoughts. They aren't magical. They are less constrained patterns of the exact same field. At the far end of the scale lies the lowest possible constraint within manifestation, what many traditions call spirit or pure consciousness. It is not a separate ghost haunting a physical machine. It is simply the most flexible, open organizational pattern the field can hold. This means a human being is not a solid, fixed object. You are a dynamic, swirling pattern of organization. Think of an existential vortex, a whirlpool spinning within a river. The human whirlpool is incredibly complex because it stretches across multiple levels of the constraint spectrum simultaneously. You process the heavy, rigid constraints of your physical biology while also holding the fluid, open patterns of your conscious mind. When people report transcendent moments, like deep meditation or out-of-body experiences, they aren't magically traveling to another dimension. Their vortex is temporarily relaxing its grip on physical constraints and shifting its focus toward the fluid end of the spectrum. Because mind and matter are connected on this same spectrum, these shifts leave a physical footprint. When the mind relaxes its constraints, we observe distinct changes in heart rate variability and brainwave activity through tools like an EEG. Our sense of a permanent, unchanging identity is an illusion. We are temporary, localized whirlpools, processing experience while spinning within the single, continuous river of Ousia. If we are just whirlpools, what does it mean to evolve? Spiritual evolution isn't a linear ladder you climb to reach a higher realm. It is the process of increasing your internal organization. It is a vortex gaining coherence, and perceiving the structure it spins within. This structural understanding naturally produces what we call ethics. Ethical behavior isn't a set of rules handed down by an external, punishing authority. It is an emergent property of a highly coherent mind. As your vortex becomes more aware, you realize that everyone else is a whirlpool churning in the exact same water. To harm another pattern is to cause a mathematical disruption to your own internal coherence. True freedom in the system doesn't mean escaping all the rules. As the philosopher Jean-Paul Sartre suggested, freedom is found in taking responsibility for your actions within your specific confines. It is deeply understanding the boundaries of your own constraint and choosing how to organize your pattern. Eventually, the cyclical journey enters its final phase, the return. What happens when a conscious vortex reaches its maximum potential for realization and coherence? A common misconception is that returning to the source adds new wisdom or experience to it. But Ousia exists entirely outside of time and cause and effect. It lacks nothing, so it cannot be improved or changed. The conscious vortex doesn't physically travel anywhere. Instead, its organizational pattern reaches a state of completion. It exhausts its need to maintain its specific, highly constrained shape. When a whirlpool finally subsides into the river, the water itself doesn't die. Only the temporary shape of the vortex ceases to exist, seamlessly dissolving until it is indistinguishable from the whole. The purpose of existence is not to escape the physical world, but to fully understand your place within it. The journey of the vortex is simply the universe exploring its own infinite potential before returning to perfect stillness.